They laughed at me for being a single mother until my cousin's fiancé revealed what I did for him. At my cousin Tisa's engagement dinner, she raised her glass, looked directly at me, and said, "I hope I never end up like her. Single with a child." The room erupted in laughter. Not polite chuckles, but real, full-throated laughter, as if she'd said the funniest thing all night. My Uncle Reuben slapped the table and added, "Men don't want used merchandise." That's just how it is. Even my own mother let out a small laugh while reaching for her wine. I froze, my face burning, heart pounding, trying to act like it didn't matter. But then something unexpected happened. Dylan, Tisa's fiancé, stood up. He didn't smile. He didn't say anything at first. He simply walked slowly across the room toward me. The laughter ceased. Chairs stopped moving. Forks hung suspended in midair. Every person turned to look. And then Dylan said, "I think you should all know something." The room fell completely silent. I had received the invitation a month before the dinner. Cream cardstock, gold lettering, perfectly ostentatious. Join us to celebrate the engagement of Tisa Rowan and Dylan Hart. I stared at it for a long time before setting it next to a pile of unpaid bills. Tisa and I hadn't spoken in over 6 months, not since she made a joke at a baby shower about how I collected diapers and bad decisions. I laughed then to keep the peace, but it sat in my stomach like a stone. I wasn't sure I could endure an entire evening surrounded by people who still looked at me as if I were some kind of cautionary tale for teenagers, despite the fact that I was 32, raising my son alone, working 2 jobs, and keeping our small apartment afloat with late-night freelance work and prayers. I almost didn't go, but my mother called 3 times the day before. "Tisa is family, Sarah. Just smile, eat a little, show your face. It's just one night." She didn't say it out loud, but I knew what she meant. Don't cause a scene. Don't make anyone uncomfortable. Blend in. So I found the nicest dress I owned, 2 years old, and barely zipping, borrowed shoes from my neighbor, and let Milo choose the necklace I would wear. He picked a small silver heart that he said looked like his. When we arrived, I could already feel the tension hiding behind floral arrangements and fake hugs. The restaurant was upscale, private room, low lighting, and soft music. Expensive wines lined up like trophies. Everyone wore elegance like armor. Tisa floated around the room in a fitted silk dress and too much perfume. She kissed my cheek as if I were her distant aunt. "I'm so glad you came," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Did you bring someone, or just Milo?" "Just Milo," I said. "Oh," she said, and turned to greet someone else. Milo was sent to the children's table with a coloring book and chicken strips. I was seated near the end of the long white-clothed table, between my mother and Aunt Valerie, who spent the first 10 minutes showing me photos of her dog's Halloween costumes. I surveyed the table. My Uncle Reuben, Tisa's father, had already downed 3 glasses. My mother seemed to have been trying to remain invisible since we walked in. Across the room, Dylan stood quietly by the bar, talking with his younger brother. I noticed how he kept checking his phone, how his smile seemed forced. It was clear who the room was for. Tisa glowed under the attention, working the crowd with practiced charm. She always knew how to make people laugh. When the appetizers arrived, my mother leaned in and whispered, "Keep your head down. You look fine." Fine. Not beautiful. Not strong. Just fine, as if that were the highest compliment she could give me. I nodded. I tried to enjoy the meal. I tried to breathe through the awkward silences and occasional pointed glances from relatives who still thought my son was some kind of stain on the family tree. I made small talk, laughed when expected, and passed the butter, but inside I was holding my breath. I didn't expect kindness, not really, but I also didn't expect what came next. When the main course was cleared and glasses refilled, Tisa stood up, raised her champagne, and tapped her fork against her glass. She waited for everyone to quiet down. I thought it would be a typical toast: love, gratitude, some awkward jokes about wedding planning. I wasn't prepared for what she actually said. I wasn't prepared for how the room would laugh. And I definitely wasn't prepared for what Dylan would do afterward. Tisa tapped her glass with a silver fork and smiled as if she were on stage. She waited until the room settled, all eyes on her, absorbing the attention as if it fed her. Dylan sat beside her, silent, hands folded. I saw his eyes flick toward me for a brief second, then back to the table. He looked tired. Tisa raised her glass. Thank you all for being here tonight. I can't believe I'm going to marry someone like Dylan. He's patient, intelligent, and most importantly, he puts up with me. Laughter rippled through the room. Her voice was smooth, polished, confident. I really just hope our marriage lasts. I'd hate to end up like some people. She turned her head toward me, just slightly, just enough. There was a pause. I mean, single at 30 with a kid. She laughed. The room exploded. Not a few uncomfortable chuckles, but real laughter. My aunt wiped her eyes. Ruben slapped the table, gasping out his own joke before even saying it. Men don't want used merchandise, he said. That's just how it is. Can't trade in a dented car and expect full price. My stomach dropped. I looked at my mother. She gave a weak smile and reached for her wine. I wanted to disappear. I stared fixedly at my empty plate, my hands in my lap clutching my napkin so tightly it crumpled into a knot. I could feel every eye glancing at me, not enough to count as confrontation, just enough to confirm the punchline. I was the punchline. I thought of Milo, just feet away, happily drawing a spaceship on a napkin. He hadn't heard. He didn't know they were talking about his mother as if she were some second-hand dress in a clearance bin. Aunt Valerie leaned toward me and whispered, "Oh, honey." She didn't mean it. Tisa just likes attention. It wasn't just attention. It was poison in a flute glass, served with dessert. I sat up straighter, refusing to let them see me falter. My cheeks burned. My heart was beating so hard I could barely hear the background music. I looked at Dylan again. He was staring at his hands. His jaw was tight. He wasn't laughing. Tisa continued as if nothing had happened. She made a few more jokes, this time about how she made Dylan get rid of his gaming console and how he'd never survive marriage without her. The laughter was softer now. Some people looked uncomfortable. My mother fidgeted with her bracelet. No one said anything. That was the worst part. No one said a thing. They laughed because it was easy, because it's easier to laugh at the woman who didn't do it right, the one who had a baby without a husband, the one who came alone, the one who didn't smile enough or play along. I thought about standing up. I thought about grabbing Milo, saying something cutting, and walking out. I had the words on the tip of my tongue, something like, "At least I raised a human being while you were still posting bikini photos for validation." But I didn't say it. I swallowed it. I sat there and let the heat rise up my chest and into my ears. I breathed deeply and reminded myself I was here for just one night, that I would go home, tuck Milo in, and not think about any of these people again. Then Dylan stood up. He didn't say anything at first. He simply pushed his chair back and walked around the table. Everyone stopped. Tisa blinked. Ruben reached for his glass. My mother stared at her lap. Dylan walked to where I was sitting. The sound in the room flattened, as if all the oxygen had been sucked out. He looked at me, then at the table full of people, the family he was about to marry into, and then he spoke. "I think you should all know something," he said. No one moved. No one laughed. In that moment, everything changed. Dylan's words hit the air like a stone thrown into still waters. "I think you should all know something." The room didn't just go quiet, it stopped. Every clink of cutlery, every nervous giggle, every movement froze. My cousin Tisa blinked in confusion, not knowing if this was part of some toast and surprise she hadn't approved. Uncle Ruben lowered his glass. My mother turned slightly in her seat, finally looking at me instead of through me. I couldn't breathe. Dylan was standing directly beside me now, not behind me, not halfway across the table, right beside me. Close enough that I could see the way his jaw was clenched. I braced for more humiliation. Maybe he was going to agree with them. Maybe he was about to say something I would never recover from. He looked at me, not with pity, not with shame, but with something else. Something solid. Then he turned to face the rest of the room. "I don't think I can sit here and let this continue," he said, his voice quiet but clear. Not loud, but just loud enough that no one dared speak over him. "Tisa," he said, looking at her now, that wasn't just a joke. It was cruel. She opened her mouth, but he raised his hand. "I need to say this." His eyes scanned the room. "All of you are laughing at Sarah as if she's some kind of failure, as if her life is this thing to avoid. But what you don't know, what you refuse to see, is that she is the strongest person in this room." My heart was pounding hard. I didn't understand what was happening. I could feel 20 pairs of eyes on me, but Dylan never broke his focus. He continued. 2 years ago, when I was at one of the lowest points in my life, Sarah helped me. Not just with job opportunities or encouragement, but with real support. She gave me her time, her energy, her kindness when no one else in this family even noticed I was struggling. People began shifting in their seats. Tisa's smile had vanished. My mother's hands were clasped tightly in her lap. When I got laid off from my tech job, I fell into a depression. I started drinking too much. Tisa told me to snap out of it. Her father told me to stop being weak. But Sarah checked on me every week. She helped clean up my resume. She connected me with someone she used to work with. She even watched my niece when my sister had surgery, just so I could go to job interviews. She never asked for anything. She didn't expect credit. She was just there. He turned to me again. "You didn't know me well, but you saw I was drowning and you pulled me out." I felt my throat closing, not with shame this time, but with disbelief. Dylan looked back at the table. "So when you laugh at her, when you reduce her to some stereotype, when you act like she's broken or used or whatever repulsive thing Ruben just said, you're not insulting an abstract figure. You're insulting the person who helped me get back on my feet. You're insulting the kind of woman I wish more people could be." Tisa stood up now. "What are you doing?" "I'm being honest," said Dylan. "I've put up with a lot of fake smiles and shallow compliments tonight, but I'm not going to sit here and watch you tear down someone good just to make yourself look better." Tisa's face was hard. "Are you trying to embarrass me?" "No," Dylan said. "You did that yourself." Some people stared at their plates. My uncle's face was red. My mother looked like she wanted to disappear. No one moved. No one said a word. Dylan looked at me again. "You didn't deserve that. Any of it." I wanted to say something. Thank you, or maybe I'm fine. But I couldn't. I just nodded. That was all I could do in a room full of people who claimed to love me. Dylan was the first to really defend me. Not behind closed doors, not later via text right there when it mattered. The air had changed. The story had changed. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't shrinking in my chair. No one moved. The room remained suspended in that thick, unbearable silence after Dylan finished speaking. I could hear the buzz of the overhead lights. Somewhere in the distance, a waiter dropped a tray. No one laughed. No one dared. Tisa was still standing, staring at Dylan as if he had slapped her in front of the entire family. Her cheeks were flushed, but not from embarrassment. This was pure, sharp anger. She looked around the table, searching for someone to save her, to back her up, to redirect the spotlight, but no one spoke. Uncle Ruben shifted in his seat and finally muttered, "He's just emotional. Don't take it so seriously." Dylan didn't even turn his head. He kept his focus on the room. "You want to talk about emotion? Fine. Let's talk about what it really takes to raise a child alone. To hold down 2 jobs. To show up for someone when it's not convenient. That's not emotion. That's strength." Tisa crossed her arms. "Are you trying to say you have feelings for her?" Dylan looked at her as if he didn't recognize the person standing before him. "I'm trying to say that I admire her. I respect her. And maybe if you spent less time acting perfect and more time listening, you'd understand why that matters." The words fell harder than anything he'd said before, because it was no longer just about me. It was about truth. It was about someone standing up in a room full of people who had built their self-esteem on hierarchy and polite cruelty and finally calling it what it was. My mother opened her mouth and then closed it. She looked at me with something like guilt, like recognition that maybe she too had failed me. For years, she had told me to keep quiet, to forgive, to smile through it all. Maybe she was seeing for the first time how deeply that silence had cost me. I didn't expect an apology, not from Tisa, not from Ruben, not even from my mother. I wasn't waiting for redemption, but I could feel the shift. Something opened then. Dylan turned fully toward me. He didn't touch me. He didn't reach for my hand. He simply stood there with the kind of quiet presence that felt like protection without possession. "You deserve better than this," he said. I met his eyes. I didn't look away. Not this time. I stood up slowly. My hands were steady now. I looked down the table and saw a room full of people who had spent years defining me by the one thing they disapproved of, as if one chapter of my life had erased all the other pages. I saw Tisa, furious but silent. I saw my mother, finally wordless. I saw Ruben trying to laugh it off with another sip of wine. And I felt no fear. I turned to Milo, still happily drawing spaceships at the children's table, untouched by the storm. He looked up and smiled at me. I smiled back. "I think we're going to go," I said to no one in particular. I wasn't asking permission. I walked to Milo, helped him gather his crayons, and picked up the drawing he had made, a little spaceship flying toward a sun with big, jagged rays. He handed it to me as if it were gold. "Did you have fun, honey?" I asked him. He nodded. "Are we going home?" "Yes," I said. "We are." Dylan stepped back, letting me pass, but he gave me a slight nod as I went by. It wasn't a goodbye. It was a message. You were seen. You mattered. You weren't wrong to stand tall. When I reached the door, I looked back once. No one was laughing anymore. Tisa sat rigid in her chair, her lips pressed into a line. Ruben stared at his phone as if nothing had happened. My mother looked at her glass, her fingers trembling slightly. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need approval. I had spoken truth simply by existing, not shrinking, not leaving in shame, and Dylan had backed up that truth in front of everyone. That was enough. I opened the door and Milo slipped his hand into mine. We walked out together, steady, unbroken. The night air felt different the moment we stepped outside, not colder, just cleaner, lighter, as if the weight I had been carrying for years had finally lifted. Not because someone took it from me, but because I stopped pretending it was mine to carry. Milo skipped a little ahead on the sidewalk, humming as he waved his drawing in the air like a flag. I watched him and thought about what it had taken to raise a child who was still joyful, still full of light, even when his mother had walked through fire to keep that light alive. I used to view my life through the lens of what I had lost, the relationship that didn't last, the family that never understood, the security I gave up when I chose to have a child alone. For years, I let their voices tell me what I was worth. I absorbed their disappointment, carried their judgment as if it were mine to fix. But walking out of that room, hand in hand with my son, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't anger. It wasn't pride. Just clarity. They weren't laughing anymore because someone finally spoke the truth, not the story they built around me, but the story I actually lived. I didn't need a man to validate me. I didn't need my family's approval to make my life real. I needed honesty. I needed someone to say out loud that I was more than the worst version of their assumptions. Dylan didn't fix me. He didn't rescue me. What he did was more powerful. He saw me, and in doing so, he didn't give the rest of the room any choice but to see me too. That moment wasn't just about defending me. It was about breaking a cycle, the kind that tells women they're only valuable if they come in the right packaging, the kind that calls mothers selfish for being alone, the kind that labels strength as failures if it comes without a ring. My mother texted me later that night. One sentence, "I'm sorry." It didn't undo anything, but it was something. A crack in the wall. Maybe even a beginning. Tisa didn't reach out to me. I didn't expect her to. I don't need her apology. I no longer measure my worth by what she thinks of me. What I needed was exactly what I gave myself permission for, to leave a place where I was being diminished and walk out whole. I tucked Milo in when we got home. He was tired but happy. He didn't ask about the dinner. He didn't ask why I looked different. He simply curled into his blankets and told me he loved me before closing his eyes. I sat in the living room, still in my dress, and let the calm settle. I thought about all the times I had wished to be invisible, all the times I had tried to make myself smaller so as not to offend, not to embarrass, not to be the subject of whispered judgments. No more of that. I've walked alone long enough to know I never need to apologize for surviving. I've raised a kind, curious, and loving child. I've built a life with determination, with grace, and with a heart that kept beating even when it seemed like no one cared. So, if anyone ever tries to laugh at that again, I won't sit silently. I won't shout. I won't cry. I'll do exactly what I did that night. I'll stand up, look them in the eye, and walk out hand in hand with the one thing that proves I've already won. Not because I'm perfect, but because I refuse to give up. If you've ever been the one they talked about behind the smile, if you've ever felt like the punchline in a story that was never fair to begin with, I want you to know something. You are not used merchandise. You are not damaged. It's not too late. You are enough, right now, just as you are, and you deserve to be seen. Many of us spend years shrinking ourselves to fit into rooms we were never meant to stay in. But healing begins the moment you stop apologizing for your truth. If this story made you feel something, if it reminded you of your own strength, your worth, or a moment when you stood up for yourself, I hope you carry it with you. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to begin again. And if no one has told you today, you're doing better than you think.